astonishing how much we know today that we didn't know 30 years ago physiologically about how the brain actually learns. And of course, one of the really critical operatives of that is memory, and we understand so much more about getting information into the long-term memory. Traditional instruction for decades, and the education that most of us had, was great at putting information into our short-term memory, not so great at putting it into our long-term memory. And what we found with accountability testing is that if we want kids to remember, we've got to teach to their long-term memory, and teaching to their long-term memory means we've got to teach them in a brain-compatible way. From John Dewey, worse than useless. And we talked a little bit about how bad worse could be. How can you be worse than useless? And I think the group came up with the idea that if it's worse than useless, it's got to actually be harmful. But worse than useless, any instruction that doesn't build on the learner's active experience. In other words, we got to take something already there in long-term memory and we got to build upon that. If they don't have that requisite, that's something to build upon, then the chances of us getting into the long-term memory is going to be greatly diminished. The process of learning has got to be just as rewarding as the outcome of learning. We have a lot of senses and sensory systems that work in the learning process, and we want all of those to work simultaneously with whatever it is you're teaching today. It's kind of the idea of we want to hijack the learner's brain for the task that you have at hand. Because if you get all the resources of the brain simultaneously focused on one thing, then there isn't much that the human brain can't do. And the fact of the matter is, the fundamental keystone of the brain-compatible classroom is that you've got to have learners learning beyond their grasp. And that's kind of the word challenge, what we use to kind of capture that. Lev Vygotsky used the term zone of proximal development. But you've got to have learners learning just beyond their grasp if they're in a challenging state. We have to organize the lesson, we have to organize the objectives such that we can drop kids in wherever they come to us in the content. And so there's got to be multiple entry points. That's what we call a multiple entry point. And then there's got to be a multiple solution path for the outcome. We've gotten a lot better. Accountability testing has made us better at authentic assessment. And about us really being able to test the desires, the outcomes that we desire with learners. Much better so than we did when we just simply used teacher-made tests and teacher-made assessments that may peripherally get to those outcomes but not necessarily get to the richness of the outcomes. And so we need outcomes that are truly demonstrative of not only how much thought and thinking and process has come out of that learning, but also that the outcome is the outcome that we've desired as well.